Okay, so this is an interesting one. So today we're going to be talking about cloud storage and how I hate it. I don't really hate it. Cloud storage and why you are going to avoid it, and some of the things it does, and why I avoid it, and some other things like that. So, and I just before starting, I had some work that I was doing for somebody, and just barely got it done 3 minutes before the show started here. So some work for Mr. Heller, a friend. And I promised him, I'll get it done as soon as I'm done. And I thought, let me see if I can get it done before the show starts. So cloud storage. And I'm doing something interesting that I've never done before. So in addition to my PC here, I have my Mac, and I'm actually running, if you're a tech person, first thing, let me check some meters here. That one looks right. That one looks right. And that screen looks right. I have 4 screens going here, 3 screens, and everything looks right. Okay. So if you have a comment, yeah, cool. Good to see you there. Tom, Steven. Hey, thank you for showing up here. So I have a Zoom. So I'm using OBS. OBS is broadcasting out to YouTube and Facebook, doing all that stuff. At the same time, I have Zoom between my Mac and my PC so that I can have, this is my Mac screen here, one of my Macs. I have multiple Macs. This is one of my iMacs that has, so that I could show the Finder here, and then I can show Windows File Manager here. So we have File Manager for the PC. We have my Mac is being controlled here remotely. So it's like, so I have Zoom, OBS going, and so anyway, yeah, just make sure, you throw a little comment in there that everything's sounding good, looking good. You can see it. It's a little more complicated than I usually do because I've never had the Zoom session going at the same time as I have an OBS session going. And I have everything else hardwired. So I have a fiber connection that comes into my place, and I have a 1 gig wired connection going into my PC. My Mac is still on wireless, so this one's going wireless. I have a high performance router, so this is it's working pretty well. I'm pretty amazed that it's all working. I'll run a wire to this one too at some point, but I don't usually broadcast with it. But you'll see it today. So we are going to be talking about anything that you want to talk about. I'm going to start off talking about cloud storage and the problems that it causes for audio production. I cannot believe at this point, iCloud is the #1 failure point that I get calls on a weekly basis, meaning in a week, I'll get more calls on it for problems than almost anything else. Now, the funny thing is the symptoms are they get into Studio One and they go ahead to open something and they're trying to find, and one of their templates won't work, or a file that they've done before comes up and it's missing files. And what happens is, because audio, when somebody creates a file, let me create a new file here, new test file, and this is true for Studio One, Reaper, Audition. Audacity puts it all in one file, which I think is the dumbest thing in the world, but they did it anyway. I'm going to create this new test file, and when I choose OK, well, what happens with this file is not really one file. We have, and this happens in all the DAWs that have some sort of non-destructive behavior. And so what they do is they have a container file. They have what we might call a refrigerator. At my house, I have a refrigerator. I'll bet you have a refrigerator. And in a refrigerator, we put stuff. And that's really what happens with the project file. In Studio One, they're called .song files. That doesn't mean it's a song. In Audition, it's a SES. Yeah, it always sounds like it's something else to me when I see it. So SES, which is their session files for the multi-track. In Reaper, I'm drawing a blank on that one. I should just open Reaper and see it. And anyway, now Audacity has its AUD3 files, or just AUD if it's in version 2. And what they all mean is they're a refrigerator that holds all your audio. And just like a refrigerator, you can have different things in there. And yeah, it looks like one file when someone opens it, but behind the scenes, as soon as I record something here and then I stop, what's not obvious to everybody is that this one little segment in this DAW is actually sitting in the background, and I can go look at it. It's under Song. Where is it? Show Media Folder and Explore. That is the actual, this little segment right here. I'm going to try, let me get both of these on the screen here. I'll move this guy over here. When I have both of them on the screen, I'll do it like this. You can kind of see this says raw, this says raw. That's the little segment that's happening right there. And as we record, what's going to happen is I'm going to record another segment, and you'll see it'll show up, pop up right here when I'm done recording. As soon as I'm done, it'll write it out to drive to the disk. So watch this. I record something here, and then boom, this is going, and now it's playing back, and I recorded, and when I'm done, you'll see right here, oh, there it is. There it is, number two. And if I turn off the preview here, Alt-P, and you see some other information, one of the things that's not obvious to everybody, in fact, it took me a long time to figure this out, and I just figured it out on my own, that what they do, and each program handles this differently. Studio One does this clever thing, which is if you arm a track, it creates the file in advance, the next one. So as soon as you arm the track, you get a blank file sitting here ready to go, and you can see it's a miniature file, and it's blank. And what that does is that way, as soon as the instant you start recording, that file has already been created and is ready to rock and roll. So you're always going to find one extra file there. That's beyond today's discussion. Now, that's all real good and easy, but one of the things that people don't realize is, imagine if I've recorded 30 minutes of audio here. So I have two segments here. I'll duplicate them. Now, it doesn't duplicate them in the background, but I'm duplicating them, and I'm going to get, and if I was smart, what I'm going to do is, now I'm going to, let me zoom out. I have 3 minutes of audio, and now I'm duplicating them by pressing one key. And now I have 35 minutes of audio, and it all happens to be the same audio. And even though it's the same audio over and over again, I have 35 minutes. Now, because they're duplicates, the better programs are smart enough to it's smart enough to know, hey, this is the same as this other one, and I keep them all, and it manages all this stuff. We do not need to know all that stuff. All right, this is information you do not necessarily need to know. But what you do need to know is, in the background, individual recorded segments are stored as individual files for a couple reasons. One of them is called safety. This is a lot safer than something like Twisted Wave, which puts them all. If you do a Twisted Wave file, you could have 30 minutes or 45 minutes if you were doing an audiobook. And if something goes wrong, you lose 35, 40 minutes. And that because no program writes its own audio. What happens whenever I ask Studio One, Twisted Wave, Audacity, anything else to write the audio, what they do is they call Windows or the Mac and say, hey, it's almost like, hey, I have children. And it's like, hey, go get me that remote. I don't really have to tell them. They know what the remote looks like. Or if you have a child and you say, hey, put this in the refrigerator. Okay, and assuming they're old enough to do that, or unload the dishwasher, something that I've said that thousands of times over my life. Hey, unload the dishwasher, load the dishwasher. Well, if we have a child that's old enough, they know the details to load the dishwasher. And if someday we got a new dishwasher and they're 15 instead of 4, and we got a new dishwasher, maybe they have to load maybe the silverware thing is on the other side. Well, remember that the computer is dealing with storing things on an SSD, a solid state drive, the old spinny hard drives, a thumb drive, a cloud drive, all these other things. The programs don't know or care about it. They're like a parent that just says, hey, put this away for me. Put this in the pantry. And then the kid, which is the operating system, runs around and puts it in the pantry and hopefully puts it in the right spot. Otherwise, I can't find it later. And then if somebody behind your back, if you're a parent, you've had this happen 100 times. You've asked your kid to put something away, they put it away, but it's not in the right spot. Then you go to look for it where you would expect it, then it's not there. Then sometimes you search around and it's actually there. You just have to search around. It wasn't on the shelf you expected. That's what happens with audio all the time. Now, all that to say, cloud storage is just like a different form of child that is going to put away something for us. And Studio One, Reaper, Audition, they don't know that cloud storage is there. And what they do is they say, hey, Mr. Mac, hey, Ms. Mac, go ahead, do me a favor, write this out. And they'll give it a name. Hey, this is my file name, Bob. And then it writes it and it puts it in the location where you've told it and the application has told it. And that's where it all becomes kind of a mess. If you use cloud storage, you're going to end up with a situation where whenever the applications that we use for running audio expect to have near real-time access to all these little segments that it needs. And while it looks like one file here, I could consolidate this whole thing down so that visually, I'll just do it. I have a little button here that will do it with one button. I'll go ahead and make it all, now it's all one long track that's 30 minutes. And so, or 25 minutes, whatever it is, I made it one long track. It doesn't really matter. One long track, 20 little segments, whatever it is, this is stored on the hard drive someplace. And as it's, and most of the programs don't even read in all this data at once because this is a lot of information, takes up a lot of space, and that's where it all gets kind of muddy. Behind the scenes, as soon as you evoke, if you, let's say, as soon as you have cloud storage, then you are telling, the programs are telling the computer, go put this away. From its point of view, the cloud storage looks the same as any other drive. Go put it away. That's fine. That will work most of the time. But some of the times it don't. Okay? And when it doesn't, we end up with an issue later because there's a bunch of moving parts between us and our computer and the cloud storage. And here's the insidious part. Today it might be working perfect. And because my internet connection's working well, the connections between us and the actual, there's a physical server someplace where it first hits and then it gets propagated and cloned so that it can be served up in many different locations quickly. But in all that process, there's a bunch of little moving parts in between. And some days that, even though like today it's raining by me, so as a lot of that stuff gets wet, then there are minor failures around, and it's all designed with this redundancy that it can reroute things around, and they'll get to me eventually. They just won't get to me as quickly as I need to. And all the audio programs are designed and assume that we have near real-time access to our data, and when we don't, it causes a problem. So that's where iCloud is insidious, because every time you update your Mac, a lot of times it tries to get you, hey, do you want some, hey, little kid, you want some free candy? I'll give you some free storage. And when it does that, then you have this one minor issue that free storage comes with a cost and another non-free lunch type thing. It's the iCloud storage, the one, it's not just the Mac, but that's the number one call I get because the Mac will do it on every one of your updates. It will go ahead and try to get people to move it. And here's what happens. Behind the scenes, the official location for the last decade plus for all the programs to keep their information is in the Documents folder. And that applies to both the PC and when I'm on my Mac, it's in the Documents folder. You can see there's a Studio One or Presonus or Zoom or Isotope. There's some folders there. That has always been the official place. Well, here's what happens as soon as you put in a cloud drive. As soon as you put in a cloud drive, it steals this Documents folder, and it actually, behind its back, puts it in a new location. It puts it on some server, not on your machine. That sounds great. Look at this, bunch of free stuff. Yeah, then when later we're in the program and it's trying to find its files, sometimes they're not available fast enough, then things fail. Especially, and then the more you do, the more you go, like, I don't want to say I hate it, because I mean, I don't really hate anything like that tech-wise, but it's one of these things where if I could charge $20 for every time I get a call about a problem that appears like RX is not working, Studio One is not working, Audacity is not working, I get calls for that. I get calls for every one of the programs. I go in and look at their machine and realize, oh, the Documents folder is no longer local. And yes, and Audacity struggles because it has such massive files these days. They're packing every track into one file. And because they're huge, you try to run in a couple gigabyte file off to the cloud storage and back from the cloud storage. It is not a pretty thing. And it can work, and it will work on some days. Because I have fiber into my place, it'll work most of the time in my configuration. You don't have fiber, and even if you do have fiber, that doesn't mean every day my fiber is running at 100%. Matter of fact, it's mostly running. I have a 2 gig connection. I only have 1 gig hardwired from the router to me. But point being, there's a bunch of complicated stuff going on in the background. There are a bunch of moving parts, and if you do this, if you don't realize that your machine is switched over to the cloud storage, then, and I'll show you on the Mac how to make that so that you know. In fact, everybody should do this. Let's talk about this. How do you know if you're running on the cloud or not? Because one of the things that will happen is you can't tell where this documents folder is stored by default. So let me talk about the Mac real quick, then I'll talk about the PC and make sure that on both you have it straight, because this will save you a bunch of grief. I've already turned it on. On the Mac, be sure to go to the View menu. And let me go ahead and zoom in here. I'll go to the View menu. And there is something here called, well, it's opposite on mine right now. Let me do this the other way. And I'm going to go through and see, look at this. See, here's a perfect example. This is funny. So I'm running, I told you, this is a really complicated setup here. Let me move my Mac. I bet my Mac went to sleep. Yeah. And I'm going to say right here. That's so funny. My Mac here it's sitting back here and not responding to my clicks here. That's so funny. And that's because the Mac is on Wi-Fi, and when you have all these moving parts, and I've got all this stuff going on, this one is temporarily not responding to me. I find that hilarious. I use this all the time, and it works great when I'm local on it. I've never tried doing it through a Zoom session. And it's possible my Zoom session could time out if I sit and not do anything. That should work for a long time. But right now, there we go. Documents folder. So it's slowly coming back. There we go. All right. See, now here's the thing. This is exactly what happens. I'm on Wi-Fi. I'm doing something complicated. There might be other things going on in the machine. Time Machine might be working and doing a backup at the same time. And then all of a sudden, instead of responding in near real time, like normally it'll respond to all my clicks almost instantly. You see now I click. I go down here. It's totally working. And then I just had a little hiccup there where for 20 seconds while I'm live, talking to you, the machine was unresponsive. Now it's working again. So people go, well, hey, no, it's working. And then, it was, but now it's not. So it looks like Studio One, or looks like Reaper, or looks like whatever program you're using. But no, it's the operating system and what's going on and all those connections there. And I'm going to go back here. But there is something called a path bar on our Mac. So let's see. I'm going to make this bigger. I will zoom in again. And everybody who works on a Mac should have this set up. Go up here to the View menu and say Show Path Bar. Okay, Show Path Bar. And what that does is at the bottom here, it shows me this is my local hard drive, and then the exact path to where my files are stored. Okay, now it depends on what I'm looking at, but it starts with the name of my hard drive. If I'm on a cloud drive, then it will start with cloud drive folder. Okay, it'll have all sorts of stuff that's sitting down here, and you will see if, now I'm not using it in this because it's I just hate it. I mean, I hate it in that I hate the issues that it creates. So I just have external drives rather than cloud drives. If you need more space, get an external drive, and don't, if you're doing audio, don't do it, because what'll happen is if I switch over to the cloud drive, it'll move this. It still looks the same to everyone. It'll still sit right here, but it'll actually be, instead of this path being this way, we'll end up showing you on it'll say iCloud, and then the folder names and all that, and just a total nightmare because it's so transparent. And when it works, if somebody's doing a little Word document or an Excel document or a bunch of documents, yeah, that totally works. And then you get on the PC and you have the same thing. this documents folder, it's like, where is it? It looks like it's at the computer, documents. No. If I right click on it and choose get info or properties, excuse me, get info is my Mac, then it shows me that that happens to be, in my case, let me get this up here. I will zoom in for you. In my case, it's under C, users, and my name. By the way, yours might not have my name there. Okay, but that folder, it's a system folder. It's a special kind of folder. And one of the things that the computers try to do, and they're really good at, is hiding things from us in terms of hiding complexity. But everything else we do in life has the same thing. I go sit in my car and I press R and it makes the wheels go the other way. And a bunch of things just happened in the transmission in order to go the other way. Or if I was in an electric car, it knows to turn the tires the other way to go backwards. I mean, but there were a bunch of baby steps in there that you and I don't have to manage. We just press R and we go in reverse. We press D and it goes forward. A lot of details are managed for us across all our life. Even my toaster, I pull the thing down and it waits, and something is paying attention to how much heat or electricity or how hot some elements are getting and how much time, and then at some point, boom, my toast pops up. I don't sit there with a stopwatch going, I wonder how long I should go and let this toast go. But that's the same thing. The details are hidden from us. And if you're using cloud storage for your drives and for your audio, I don't want to say guaranteed fail. I've had people go 6-8 months and have it work and then call me. And then now they want to blame if they're using RX. Oh, RX is failing. If you're using Studio One, Studio One's failing, whatever. They will blame the app because that makes sense. That's where they see the symptoms. They don't realize it's not working until they go into a program. And so you don't know. Now, if you see this, if I click on this, it says documents. It implies I'm in the documents folder. I'm not in the documents. Well, I am in the documents folder, but it doesn't give me all the information. On the Mac, it's the same thing. Unless I show this path bar, I do not know exactly where things are. Okay? So turn that on, and let me a couple bonus on the PC. You definitely want to do, where is it now? Oh, there's the view, and be sure to turn on your file extensions. All right, let me see if I can zoom in on that. You want to turn on the file extensions. Okay, that really helps. That makes life better. It makes it easy to tell WAV files from MP3 files. When you're on your Mac, you have the same thing. Go into the Finder. When the Finder is open, go over to the Finder and go to Settings. And in the settings there, under Advanced, show all file name extensions. I will zoom in on that. Show all file name extensions. You want that on. So if you have that on and you've gone to the view and you've turned on the option that says show path bar, those two options make your life a whole lot easier dealing with audio if you're on the Mac. And the PC has the equivalent where you go over there and you make sure under the view that you turn on the file name extensions, okay? And do that. Turn off, okay. So, and first off, let me see if there's any questions. And turn this back. All right, all sounds fine. OneDrive should be configured to, oops, didn't mean to hit enter. OneDrive should be turned off in my mind, but you can use it to do backups, okay? All the cloud storage beyond our discussion today, but the cloud storage can be used to back up important documents. That's cool. It's when I create something new, most people aren't even aware. If I go over here and I do something new and I say new and this, and then there's a location. And I know this is one of my internal drives, but because of it being hidden, if somebody goes in and they do just the default, because the default location for applications for over a decade was supposed to be in the documents folder, like Prasannas would have, no, it'd be under Studio One. By default, they were putting things right in here, which is the Studio One songs folder, and that would be the default. And that documents folder historically was local, and then when the cloud storage comes in, it will move documents to the OneDrive if you're on the PC. It'll move the documents folder to the iCloud if you're on the Mac. And it's transparent to us unless you dig it down. And just like so many, it's transparent to us what the car's doing. When I do certain things, it just does this stuff for us and we don't even know. And you get a new car and it may handle it differently and you don't need to know every detail about it. It just works. But in our case, with our complexity, it does not work. And then if you ever talk to somebody at Apple, I've had this come up all the time too. So I talk to somebody, we say, hey, you need to get everything off the iCloud. And they go in and they talk to one of these Mac, quote, geniuses, and they try to talk them into keeping it. Oh, no, it's the greatest thing ever. It'll help you. And it's like, no, it's not. We don't want it. But they want to talk us into it. By the way, both of those companies are trying to get a monthly fee out of you. It's $5. Hey, only $3, only $5. If you're doing audio, you'll run out of space fairly quickly. Okay, so don't let them talk you into it. So let me check the questions here. Yes, so Krill, you have that right. OneDrive can keep files locally if configured properly and uploads to cloud, much like a backup, no download delay. Yes, if. Nah, but it doesn't keep files locally all the time unless you configure it properly. Okay? It can be used as a backup, but what I see is people not realizing that their documents folder is already on the cloud or their desktop is already on the cloud, and then they are not realizing that because it's not obvious. If I go up here to desktop, I know where my desktop is, but if somebody has OneDrive on their PC, then that desktop could be on their OneDrive, because that's the idea. Then I can pull up my laptop and my desktop shows up the same on my laptop as my PC. It's the same thing on my Mac. I can have iCloud set up and I look at and I say, well, let's just put everything on the desktop. Well, that seems like it's fine. In my case, yes, it is set up, in my case, to go to my local hard drive, but it is not always. And so so I totally agree with you. There are configuration options on both of them where you can set it up to where it will operate as a backup rather than a primary storage location. And yes, it does keep the files local while you're working with them. But let's say you open something today in the default configuration, it is reading and writing locally, storing them there. But then at some point, they take them off the local drive, because that's the point of the cloud drive, is that you can have that you don't need the space on the local drive when you're not working with it. And it's supposed to bring it back near instantaneously, but it doesn't sometimes. Guarantee you. Like I said, it is the number. Do I use a hub to connect a group of hard drives, or do you use one outboard drive at a time? If you use boy, Tom, is that a loaded question? I will do a session over the next couple on hubs, because, so let me see if I highlight this. Will that come? Yeah. Do you use a hub to connect to a group of hard drives, or do you use one outboard drive at a time? First thing is, buy a big enough drive if you can, but if you do need hubs, the brands, that's the biggest nightmare. If you're on a Mac, what a nightmare. Sean Pratt needed a new hub, and I spent an hour and a half researching them, and I know a lot about them already. But the problem is 3 to 6 months after you do your research, all your research is out to lunch, and you got to do it again because there's just the new batch of them. I will say this: don't buy the cheapest hubs. Almost always those are a problem. We almost always, if you're going to run multiple drives, you have to have a hub that has its own power, because they will run out of power when they're running multiple hubs. So you can do a hub that has its own power supply, and you have both in the Mac and the PC. Some hubs take all their power from the computer. Some take it, and you can get away on the Mac. They can pass through enough power, but the Macs like to have a USB port of their own that's for power delivery. And so there's so many options. It is crazy. It is just nuts. It's one of my big complaints about Apple, is that in the portables, they put it down to 1 or 2 ports, and you have to buy a hub. And we're doing things that are way more complicated than they care about. I mean, we're not their primary audience. There's a reason there's only one port in there, because the average person, that 95 percentile only needs one, and there's fine. For those of us that are doing a lot, then we'd have to talk about, are you doing the Mac or are you on the PC? Once you narrow that down, then how many ports do you need? And certainly I can see having 2 external drives. That makes sense to me. Having a lot more than that, not necessarily. I don't. Most people are not going to need multiples, but they may need to plug in their interface. They may need to plug in a hard drive or an SSD, one of those types of things. So an external drive, and so you could have 2 external drives and an interface. If you have all that going on, guarantee you will need one that has power going to it on its own, in addition to just being plugged into the computer. Okay, but there are exceptions to that. It actually gets really complicated because it depends on which Mac you're using, depends on which PC you're using, depends on what those ports are rated for as to how much power they can pass through. Just 100 different things, but that's why you will find the better hubs. You're probably going to get into a hub that's between $50 and $100 if you're going to have a hub that can service multiple drives and an interface all at the same time. So a big discussion. I can't believe how much time I've spent shopping for hubs, and then I go back 3 to 6 months later to find something for somebody and have to spend another 30 to 60 minutes going, okay, that model, there's a new model of this, and what's the difference between it, and do you need USB-C or USB-A, or how many Cs do you need, and there's not as many options in the Cs, and you get into something that's a little more expensive. They're all under a couple $100, but they're a lot more expensive to get the good ones and to deal with enough power going to all the devices that we might use. Okay, so sorry to get into that one's just I really need to do a whole session on that and find. And as a matter of fact, what in the comments on this video on YouTube, throw in your favorite hub so that I know which ones you guys are using, and I will go do some research. And literally, I swear to you, I just had this happen a month ago. It was Sean Pratt. He got a new computer, and we looked at it and thought, he might need a new hub. We did figure out in this case, because what we ended up buying didn't need an extra one, didn't need the hub. But I was thinking it did, and I spent 45 minutes to an hour looking at all the newer hubs because it had been something north of 6 months since I had bought one for somebody else. I just could not believe how many there are, and then how many of them, when you at first glance, seem right, and then you dig in the details, and it's like, So yeah, we'll look at the hubs. Okay, so Tom, I'll have to look at and see what I'll check that link out. Thank you for putting that in there, and I will check that out and see. But the thing is one of the weird things is you and I can have good luck with a hub because I need, say, I've got 2 hard drives and an interface. Somebody else may need an interface, and then they've got a couple other things, and it just depends on what they're running. And so some people can get away with 1 extra USB-C port. Some need more. Some need less. Everything's going to USB-C. It'll all be easier about a year from now because the European Union has mandated that USB-C is the standard. There's no more. You can do something. You have to have USB-C for all the phones. So it's not going to be lightning connectors going to the phone. So all the hubs will support USB-C as the primary, and lightning works over USB-C, and it's just all a complicated mess. The standards are crazy. It's not, there are no quote standards, just a big mess. It drives me crazy. All right, so I will check that out. We'll do a whole one on hubs because it's something that almost everybody at some point needs if they're using laptops. And I'll just go on another rant here. I just think everybody who's doing this, extensively should have a desktop. You can put the desktop out of the room. You can use a Mac Mini, but then you're going to get into hubs. So the Mac Mini only comes with a couple ports in it, and almost everybody who gets one has to have an external hub in order to feed everything. So they're cool, but I prefer a desktop machine, which starts with more connections to begin with. And but yeah, it's a whole nother rant. And people want to use a laptop. And I just tell you flat out, laptops are not designed to be on 24. I leave my computers on for years. Every one of the computers I've had over the last 30 years have been on for an average of 5 to 10 years at a time without ever going off. and they last a crazy amount of time when you do that, when they're not switching on and off. And then laptops, people put them to sleep, and that causes all sorts of other things if they're not configured correctly. So yeah, just a different animal. Okay, so how do you like that for being a whiner? I mean, oh, and I also like this. If you're on the Mac and you want to whine about PCs, talk to me. I can whine about PCs all day. And if you're on the PC and you want to whine about the Mac, talk to me. There are so many little things. If you use both back and forth, you go, I don't have that problem on the other one. And the one problem I do see, a lot of PC users end up buying something less expensive, and then later they complain, hey, it doesn't work as well as a Mac. It's like, yeah, you didn't invest as long as you're willing to, if you're talking apples to apples, quote unquote, we're going to end up with something where if you're going to spend $1,500 on the Macs, and if you spend $1,500 on a PC, you can get a darn good machine. And they both have their own issues with their operating systems. But that's another discussion. We'll talk about all that another day. All right. Any other questions before we go for today? My takeaway: do not use iCloud storage or OneDrive as your primary where you store your audio files. It might work, and it will work, and some people will have it work for X months. And I get the calls. I cannot believe how many of them. I have to figure out. I've complained to my wife. I have to figure out a way to charge people $20 to $50 for troubleshooting their issues with iCloud. And so I don't think we'd pay our mortgage with that every month. But man, we'd have some great dinners out because it is such a problem. And people don't even realize it has nothing to do with Studio One, Reaper, Audition, Audacity, Twisted Wave. They just think that they think it's that program's not working right because it can't find its documents, but it has to do with iCloud storage. So if you're going to use it on your machine, first have external drives that you're using as your primary storage location. When it comes time to create a new document on whatever your program is, they always give you an option of where to put it. And I can go over here and put it in my audiobooks folder. That audiobooks folder could be a local folder. It could be this happens to be my internal drive. It can be on an external drive. Fantastic. It can also be a cloud drive that if I'm not careful and I'm not paying attention and I pick my documents folder, this could look like it's a local drive, but it's not. So if you have the paths turned on our Mac, we can see that, that's the iCloud. It would actually start with the word iCloud drive down here. And if you're looking at that, that's what you'll see. Just turn on the path bar in the Mac. If I go around here, it's right there. There's the show path bar, hide path bar. You want that on. On the PC, you go over and you look at this and you go to the documents folder and you right click on it, and based on the properties there, you can see the location. And when you see that location, you'll see where it is. If it's on the iCloud drive, you'll see it there. Not the iCloud. If it's on OneDrive, you'll see it there. And I guarantee you, you do not want to keep it on the OneDrive. So if you're sophisticated and you're a tech person, you can get away with all sorts of stuff. You still will get burned on audio because all the little files. No different than if I have one of my kids put the ice cream away and they didn't realize that's a freezer thing and they throw it in the refrigerator, and I go looking for it later in the freezer and it's not there because they thought it was just a refrigerator item. It's like, wait a minute, where'd that go? And then later you go, yeah, it was here. It's just in the wrong place, or the opposite. It's that kind of thing. There's so many moving parts in there. Avoid them. But if you're very sophisticated and you know exactly what you're doing and where things are stored, as long as you're not using your primary storage location as the cloud storage, you'll be okay. Using it for backup, man, I'm all in on that. That totally works great for that kind of stuff. You just have to be sure you are aware of how to configure it. And if you're not, Google is a big resource. I'm going to do a course on how to make sure all that stuff works, make sure people can know where things are. Donnie and I have talked about doing a class on storage, how you're storing it, how you're managing it, because I get so many questions on that. And usually it's after somebody's doing this a little bit, because at first, they put it wherever they want. And then later, it becomes overwhelming, but it would be like, I don't, if I were a young guy again, I'm not. But as a young guy, you don't clean up your kitchen. I'll be real sexist here. A lot of young guys don't, they'll all clean up the kitchen later. Yeah, it becomes a mess real quick. You get to be an old guy like me. Because it's a habit that got established over many years, you clean up the kitchen every day before you go to bed, and then life is easy. You brush your teeth before you go to bed every day. Life is easy. You just get in habits of doing little things. And it's the same with the computer. It's a habit where you keep things. And once you're in the habit of saying, you know what, I'm going to have a folder dedicated to something like audiobooks. And then when I go to audiobooks, I have my current audiobooks there. I even have an archive audiobooks where I have hundreds of books that are archived, so that I don't have to have in my primary one. Anything that isn't within the last few months usually is not going to be in my audiobook folder. But I have an audio folder, and I have this is tech videos. And I just, anybody who's run a household, anybody that's done any hobby, you get organized about some things. And like, if you're like me, I'm unorganized about some things. But on the computer, I'm super organized, because you get burned later if you're not organized and you're working with audio. And that's the only reason I'm probably pretty good at it these days, is because I've messed it up more than you've even dreamed of. I can't believe how many, and then after a while you go, I didn't save any time by just going, oh, I'll do that later. Nope. It adds up and it becomes a big mess. And then, you have problems. All right. Let me look at this over here. Good luck with you don't see paths on the view menu on the Mac. Well, there should be a yours could. Let's see. If you go view, hide path bar, show path bar, you can. Let me zoom in on mine. So, it should be there someplace. I don't know what. The Mac Mini is using iCloud. Yep. So my Mac. So Steven says, my Mac Mini is using iCloud for document storage. Yep, that's normal. And so, hold on, let me do this here. Hold on. All right. You can plug in an external drive, and every time you save the file, you get to pick which location it goes. You are not, just because by default it's going to a certain spot. So by default, if I was using Studio One, for example, by default, Studio One wants to go to its songs folder. Okay, by default, that's going to the documents folder. By default, if I have iCloud on my Mac, that documents folder is going to be in the cloud. If I'm on my PC and I have OneDrive, that documents folder is going to default to OneDrive, both cloud storage. But nothing says you have to put anything any place. You can put it away any place you want. So when you are creating a file, you get to select which folder it's stored in. Just because it defaults to the documents folder, that doesn't mean we have to keep it there. And most good programs, once I change to something else, it'll stay where I changed it. So if I were creating new file 1 and I put it into my super demo 1 and I say okay, and I come back a little later and I do another one where I create a new again, then what you are going to see is it's still going to stay in the same place. Then I could create another file here, and I still get to pick where they go. And that's what we have to do, Stephen. Let me check. Yeah, glad not to be the only one currently on overwhelmed because of this. It is absolutely overwhelming. Okay. It's just one of those things that there are so many. Oh yeah. My wife, too, when she had a period of time where she was tutoring, and she had this one kid that just put everything on his desktop, and he had hundreds of things on the desktop, and then he would complain to her he couldn't find anything. And it's like, well, yeah, okay, but that's like a kid that doesn't put their toys away, I guess, or I mean, I don't want to get into all the things I don't put away at different points, and I can't find a tool. And then, of course, I have my children. It's like screwdrivers. I bought sets of screwdrivers over the years. It's like, hey, I think my kids eat screwdrivers because I actually have a designated place Hey, can I borrow your screwdriver? Sure, sure. And it ends up, I don't have any screwdrivers, or I've got a whole set except for it's missing these three, and it's always kind of fun. But it really is one of those things that over time, um, yes. So I do. Uh, I remember Lisa coming home and telling me about this one, because one of the things, I'll tell you one thing. When we were young in this business, Lisa didn't realize that she could create folders. Like, she just thought, well, the machine created the folders, and because it comes with a certain set of folders, and this was very early on when we were had our own first PCs. She just didn't realize, oh, yeah, just because it goes ahead and creates a folder, and maybe it says called songs here, that I, not realizing that we get to create another folder here and say new folder for organizing something. And I remember saying to her, hey, create folders when you need them, and create organize. Now, most of it, she's done that thousands of times for, like, oh, this drawer is where the silverware goes. This cabinet is where we're going to keep glasses. So this is where she keeps, if you walk into the closet, this is where the shoes go. This is where her stuff goes. In our storage things, this is where the school supplies are. This is where the Christmas, we have a little area where all our little Christmas stuff is stored. And every year we get it out and we use it for a couple months, and then it goes back to the Christmas storage area. Did Don decide where the Christmas storage area is? Nope. But I know where it is because someone else did. So anyways, she took responsibility for one time saying, this, we're going to keep it. And I just go, sure, I don't care. Fine. And that's really what you want to do with your computer. You own it. You own the space. It's your drive. And if you need an external drive, get an external drive. It's like having a new shed on your property, and you can put stuff in the shed, and you decide what you put there. And every time you create something new, put it in the shed. Okay? That's exactly what's going to happen here. All right. So, can you create a mecha that will save to a specific folder? Uh, I don't know, Nancy, if you can do that. But one of the good things is, every time you save to a specific folder, like if you this folder here is going to be the default. If I change this right now, mine's an audio super demo. If I change this to something else, I'm going to go ahead and put this, let me just do it. I'm going to go and put it on my documents folder. So now, by default, I'm going to select this folder, and now this is C user documents. Okay, so that means whatever I put in here, new file to documents, I'll call it, that's going to go there. And then when I come in and next time I go ahead and I create a new one, most programs are like this, it defaults to same folder I used before. All right. So it's going to default. I'm going to have a new one in that same one. So it's going there automatically. Now, you may have to go through all the brain damage of saying, well, no, I'm going to, if you're working on books, it's easy because you're going to go back to the same master folder for your book, and that's fine. If you're working voiceover, you're going to go to a different client. You're going to have to look up. You're going to have a place. Lisa orders hers by clients. Matter of fact, she has a client folder, and today she told me, if I remember right, 249 projects that she has done for this one client. And she knows that because every time she gets a new project for that client, she creates a new folder for. So remember, I told you in the early days she was afraid, in a sense, to organize the computer. Today, she didn't ask me. She's created 249 folders for this client, but she knows that every project she's ever done for this one client, 250 of them roughly, are all in one folder, and she has a master clients folder, so she can go ahead and sort them by, most recently used, but also by client name, and she can go find that client A has 10 projects that she's done for him, and this client she's done 250 for, and she knows the exact number because she created a folder. So you can create folders too. And if you create a macro that creates a new folder, then I think you're still going to have to name it. So you have a common place. And I'll talk about that. It's organization. I told you, Donnie and I are going to I'm going to actually do a course on that coming up, on how I organize everything on the computer. And is it perfect? Nope. There is no perfect. But boy, any system and any starting point that's reasonable is way better than none. Okay. So, like I said, and we're doing something weird on this class. We're actually doing something we've never done before, which is you decide how much you want to pay. So you want to pay $1, you can pay $1. You want to pay $150, you can pay $150 for the course. We are actually experimenting with a concept of you decide how much you want to pay on this one. We've never done this before, okay? But everyone, so if you want to pay $2, you pay $2. Now we would hope somebody would be reasonable and go, hey, these guys have put in a lot of time and effort and they pay something for it, but we do have a class coming up that is going to be on organizing your files, organizing your machine, not losing files, how we do it, some suggestions, because you may not like my system. That's fine. I mean, I get that. But you need a system, and I do have systems for all this stuff. So anyway, that's coming up in the next few weeks. All right, you guys have a fantastic day. $350. I don't know. Oh, Lisa's telling me that client that I said 250. She says that client, she's done 350 projects for this one client, and she knows because she created a folder for every one of their projects. I thought you said 250. She said 350. Whatever. I knew it was a lot. I didn't want to. I didn't want to exaggerate if she had only said 150. So I thought 250 was safe, and I'm wrong. She put it in there 350. So you got to be organized. Well, you don't have to. You don't have to do nothing. You ain't got to do nothing. You can do it however you want. You'll get burned big time if you don't do something. Okay, something is really the right thing to do. And that's really the right thing to do. So, all right, hope you guys have a fantastic week. I'll be back next week. Keep questions. If you throw questions in there, more than happy to answer them and make things easier for everybody. And I don't like getting the calls for iCloud because it's one of those things that's such a pain, but I'd rather be helpful than not. It's just I'm trying to keep people from having to go through that brain damage for the day it doesn't work. So if it's been working for you, cool. But get off of it as soon as you can, because at some point, I'll almost guarantee you, it will fail some point. And it fails temporarily and we can recover everything from it, but it's a hassle and it means going and doing a bunch of extra work. And people panic out because they had something due today and all of a sudden they can't get to their stuff in the middle of a day. And that's why I get the call, because they're panicked. They need to have this thing working within the next few hours, and they have a period where it's not working right. And then we got to go get it, bring it all local. Yeah, drives our pain. All right. Hope you have a fantastic week. I'll check one final time. All right. You guys have a fantastic day. Be sure to subscribe to the channel, of course. Be sure to tell other people about this, of course. I look forward to seeing you on the wires. Have a great one. Talk to you. Bye.